Got to read between the lines. Got to read between the lines.
Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of What's Going On. I'm your host, Tom D'Ambra. As always, we are very thankful you take the time from your busy day to join us. I would like to say a special hello to Yorkie. I understand, Yorkie, that you are a dedicated observer of this program. You are a truth seeker, and I just wanted to say a personal hello to you, and I thank you. We thank you so much for your desire to seek the truth. Please keep that up, and hopefully watching this program we can take you down the avenues of truth, which is what this program is all about. Yorkie, again, we thank you so much for being the dedicated watcher that you are. Okay, my friends, this week I want to just do a little review of the statement made by Colonel Edward Mandell House. But before we do that, I was hoping that everyone would have the opportunity to view the documentary that we just showed for the last 2 weeks called, it's about mind control. This documentary was very well done, and I'm hoping, my friends, that you'll have a base understanding, a foundation, if you would, of the mechanics that are used on a daily basis to control the thinking processes of the American people and the people of the world for that matter, but also to make you understand what they want to keep you in this blind-sided thinking. They don't want you thinking outside the box, as the saying goes. They certainly do not want you to be asking questions and finding the answers of truth. So I hope you found that very informative. I know that when I watched that program myself, I thought it would be a wonderful piece for the viewing audience of this program. And again, my hopes is that you got as much out of that as I did. So before we get into Colonel Mandell House's statement, we're going to review the language that he used. 3 weeks ago, I was just able to speak of it at the very end of the program. I did read it to you verbatim, but I'm also aware that a lot of the terminology, the definitions of language, are foreign to most Americans. Most Americans don't know what a bill of lading is. They don't understand what happens when you register something. They don't have any understanding of what the language and what Mr. House was speaking of, quite openly, about the future slave condition, both personal and in property and economic, of the American people, what the plan was. So we're going to get into that, and hopefully I won't digress too much, and we'll stay focused on that topic and really break that statement down. But some of the headlines that I'd like to cover this week that you might have missed if you're getting your information on the mainstream media. This private organization, called the Heritage Foundation, along with the Wall Street Journal, we all know who the Wall Street Journal is, basically they did a 2014 index of economic freedom. And I don't have the time to go through the whole thing, but basically, my friends, what they did was they took the top 100 countries in the world and they made an index, if you would, a rating of where these different countries are by policies of the government for freedom, okay? Business freedom. I'm talking about the opportunity to open a business, what processes you had to go through, what fees you had to incur, what taxes you were liable for, and so forth. Well, anyway, when this is all said and done, the United States of America has been bumped out of the top 10. And I just found that disgusting. I'm not surprised by it. In all honesty, I really thought that we would be a little bit lower on the scale than where we were. But they had the United States in this study. And what they discovered was that the United States is no longer in the top 10. And that basically we're down right now to number 12. And I found this to be a little bit of a facade. I really, when I looked at their criteria, first of all, I do not trust the Wall Street Journal. but second of all, I think they really bumped things for the United States. But another interesting thing that I discovered was when you went through this program, and at the very end they had these items called countries of, basically, they have no ranking. And what they mean by that is there was basically no economic freedom to go ahead and upstart a business. You could not be an entrepreneur. The burden of the government was so heavy. So I thought this was interesting because listen to the countries that they mention: Afghanistan, Iraq, Kosovo, Libya, Liechtenstein, Somalia, Sudan, and Syria. Now, my friends, the United States occupies Afghanistan. The United States occupies Iraq. The United States occupies Kosovo. The United States occupies Libya. The United States occupies Somalia. The United States occupies Sudan, and the United States occupies Syria. And if you think about this previous to the United States occupying these countries, particularly well, I won't say that we occupy quite yet Syria, but what's taken place there is Al-Qaeda, our agent provocateurs, have disrupted that country so much that according to this rating, they basically no longer see this as an opportunistic country to upstart a business. So with all these countries I've just mentioned, next to Liechtenstein, we do not occupy and or have our agent provocateurs in them countries. And I've got to tell you, my friends, I believe that is the way that we will be going here in the United States. Another interesting thing that came to my mind, this is from the National Journal, and this was in their energy section. And it says, Democrats plan to pressure TV networks into covering climate change. Well, wait a minute. I thought we had an open and free press, not to the dictates of international bankers and other politicians. And as it turns out, our socialist senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders, he no longer calls himself a socialist, he calls himself independent. I beg to differ. But it's basically, he has started a new 19-member climate change action task force. And basically what he's going to do is they are going to pressure the major news agencies, ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox are particularly mentioned. They are going to pressure them to cover climate change. Now, my friends, I thought it was called global warming. But you see, the global warming thing has become actually known for what it is, a facade. We're actually going the other way. We are going into a cold swing. As a matter of fact, the country of Canada no longer allows the theory of global warming to be taught in their school system because of facade science, or as they call it, pseudoscience. So what they have done is they have said, and I applaud them, that we will not be teaching this in the public school system in Canada because the science just does not back it up. And you may be asking yourself, well, Tom, what about the 1,200 scientists that signed the global warming document, saying this was a pertinent threat to the very existence of mankind? Well, I will tell you, when you research these scientists, most of them were in degrees in political science. None of them, zero of them, were climatologists or meteorologists. On the other hand, you have the document signed by 15,000 climatologists and meteorologists, and we have had this on this program. As a matter of fact, we showed you in numerous documentaries about the facade of global warming. And basically what they said was that the CO2 has no effect on the climate. Now, to go a step further with this, the United Nations, as you know from watching this program, about 4 months ago came out and said that the sun has no effect on our climate. That's ludicrous. We might as well go back to that the earth is flat. But this is their official position, and we read this verbatim to you, that the sun has no effect on our climate. Now, as for climate change, the only consistency in our climate since it began in recorded history is that the climate is always changing. If you look into things of different settlements, particularly the Nordsmen, when they were up in Greenland at one time, they had farms, they had all kind of green pastures, and then the weather got, and through the cycles of about 120 years, the weather got so cold that they actually vacated their settlement. All right? So you got to understand, my friends, that they can't go with global warming anymore. They cannot do it because the facts do not back it up. So they've changed the terminology on you. They've changed it so you will go along with the new facade, and that is climate change. Because what they're after here, and don't forget, and we read this verbatim to you, that this whole facade was developed in the 60s by the Club of Rome. We read it verbatim to you, how they were going to make global warming, CO2, the essence of global warming, hence making man the enemy of man himself, if you remember that. And also that pollution does not recognize borders, whether they be state borders, national borders, international borders, or the borders on your farm and or your property. Pollution does not recognize borders, hence giving them the opportunity to erase any borders that you think are protecting your sovereignty to whatever little degree, whether it's your personal property, which you don't own. If you've been watching this program, you know that you are merely tenants. You are either a tenant in common, or a joint tenant. You do not own anything. And we're going to get into that a little bit through our Black's Law Dictionary with Mr. House's statement. He actually, in his own language of law, is telling you that. But we'll get into that in a little bit. So what you've got to understand is this is the new derivative. This is the new facade. Because what they're going to do is you are going to pay carbon taxes. And your business will have to purchase carbon credits. And what I mean by that is, let's say you produce tires for automobiles. Well, automobiles produce carbon dioxide. And to produce that tire, that's right, you're going to have to pay Al Gore and all his cronies, the Rothschilds and the rest of them, you're going to have to buy carbon credits so you have the ability to produce that tire. Buy a gallon of gas, you're going to be paying carbon taxes. Buy a piece of steak or a pound of hamburger, you're going to be paying carbon taxes. Why? Because cows exhale carbon dioxide such as man does. Hence the statement, making man the enemy of man himself. Okay? And if you're the farmer who's producing this beef, whether it be for milk, whether it be for beef, this cow, this animal, well, guess what? Whether they're a milker or they're a beefer, they both expel what? Carbon dioxide. You, the farmer, are going to have to purchase carbon credits. And who do you think in the end of the mechanics of purchase and sale is going to pay for these carbon credits and or taxes? You are. The purchaser is going to have to pay it because, as we know, all the cost of doing business, whether it's producing the product, the hired hands to put it together, the transportation costs, whatever it is, it all boils down to the price tag. And that's exactly what is going to be going on with this. All right? This is a complete facade. We have shown you numerous and numerous documentaries with some very well accredited climatologists, meteorologists, that basically have come out in concrete science and telling you this is a facade. We have the writings from the people who came up with the idea of the Club of Rome in the first place, telling you this is the game, this is how we're going to do this, this is what we want the end result to be. And again, my friends, if you think the EPA was developed to take care of the environment, well, I will tell you the real reason why the EPA was developed. And we get this from the white papers. And what it was this, that when we went into what's called a true fiat currency, there was no more gold or silver backing it up in the early 70s and 71. What took place was that they said to Saudi Arabia, listen, we're going to shut down the domestic oil production in the United States. we are going to purchase all of our oil from you. We are going to protect you militarily. We are going to make you rich beyond your wildest dreams. But for this benevolent action that we're giving you at the cost of the American taxpayer through the expense of high gasoline, the transportation to get it here, through the expense and cost of blood and money to protect Saudi Arabia and be involved in the Middle East the way we are, you, Saudi Arabia, are going to purchase by percentage X amount of treasury bonds to keep this facade floating. And this is how Saudi Arabia became such big holders of our debt, because this was set up through an organization that you know is OPEC. And you really think that these countries that have been battling each other for millennium, for centuries, finally all of a sudden in 1970 got together and said, hey, you know what, we're going to form this organization called OPEC, and we're going to make the Americans shut down their domestic oil production, and we're going to somehow get them to protect us militarily. Well, my friends, we did it to ourselves. Not we as in the people, we as in the organizers of OPEC, who, my friends, originated in Washington, D.C., the District of Criminals. Okay? So the EPA was developed as a mechanism in the guise, because they always have to sell it to the American people, in the guise of doing multiple things. But the first mission criteria was to shut down domestic oil production here in the United States. Of course, there was a lot of benefits to this one in their regard, because look what they've done to the family farm. Look what they've done to the security of borders, like I said, whether it be international, national, or your private land, which is not really private land, isn't anymore. We know that. You don't have a lordly title, my friends. You have certificate of title. Okay, some other news that you might have missed if you're getting all your information from the banker's choir, as I call it. President Barack Obama said on Tuesday that he would not wait for Congress to pass legislation to advance his policy priorities this year, and said that he was getting close to finishing a review of U.S. surveillance practices to be unveiled on Friday. That would be this Friday. Obama, speaking to reporters during a cabinet meeting at the White House, foreshadowed his upcoming State of the Union address and what appeared to be a new messaging strategy by emphasizing his ability to take executive actions without approval from lawmakers. We are not just going to be waiting for legislation in order to make sure that we're providing Americans the kind of help they need. I can tell you what kind of help Americans need. They need to get the burden of this insolvent banker-run corporation off their backs. If they want to turn this economy around, let the American people do it. Get out of our way. I got a pen and I got a phone, and I can use that pen to sign executive orders and take executive actions. Obama began last year with high hopes of making progress on gun control and immigration reform and other issues. Let's just take these two issues right here. Gun control. While the government is militarizing their domestic security forces, to use their own words, tanks, MRAPs, billions of rounds of ammunition and so forth, they are trying to take your guns, your ammunition from us. And why? Because when you really look at crime, and the statistics show this, this isn't make-believe, my friends. This is real. The people that have more armed citizens have the less crime. It's very simple. If you are a criminal, are you going to jump someone who you know has a gun on them? Or are you going to jump someone who you know is helpless because they do not have a gun on them? Are you going to go into, let me back up something. In New York, when the upstate New York newspaper, and forgive me, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, when they went and released all the addresses of people with registered guns in that distribution area, let me tell you what every criminal in the place was doing. They were buying that newspaper so they could find out who was armed, and I will assure you what properties they went to. The addresses that were not in that article because they didn't have registered firearms. Look at the state of Vermont here. We have pretty much some non-existing firearm laws, although is a big push right now coming up to implement firearm laws. But yet, year after year after year, we're either number 1 or number 2 or number 3 in safety. Why is that? When you take the example of places like Chicago, Washington, D.C., and New York City, that you are not allowed to have a gun, crime is through the roof. As a matter of fact, this new phenom known as knockout, which is a game played particularly by black youth against the unsuspecting general public, where they walk by you unprovocated and they hit you in hopes that they can knock you out. All right? This is the culture that we have in America today. This is fun now, to do bodily harm and injury to somebody. Life has lost its sanity and sanctity here in the United States. We murder hundreds of thousands of babies through a right of pro-choice called abortion. Life has lost its sanctity here in the United States. But Mr. Obama, excuse me, his real name is Barry Soetoro. You know, folks, think about Obama. What do you really know about him? What do you really, really know about him? He wasn't even a one-term senator in Illinois. They describe him as a good community organizer. What do you really know about this man? Zero. You're not even sure where he was born. And he's not even sure how many states are in the United States. And what I mean by that was when he made that statement, that, and I quote verbatim to you, "I have been in 57 states with one more to go." Think of that. This guy is the CEO of the insolvent corporation you call the United States, and now he is going to toss away our legislative processes of a representative elective government. He's throwing it away because he's decided, and don't forget now, during his campaign pledges, he said that he taught the Constitution and that he would not use executive orders. My friends, this man has signed 4 times executive orders than any other president in the history of our country. Okay? This is serious, what's going on here. So he's gun control. He wants to take your guns away. And immigration reform, anytime you hear the word reform, my friends, you better be looking over your back. Because what they're going to do is they are going to make it a free highway for cheap, uneducated labor to come into this country, take what little jobs are left, lower the wages of this country, and not only that, destroy the culture. That's another big part that people aren't talking about, this immigration reform, destroying the culture. And if you want to study in a place where they lost their bit of a country, a large segment of their country because of the change of culture, I invite you to study the state of Texas. When the Mexican government, the Sandinistas, allowed the Anglos to come into Texas because they wanted to establish it. They wanted to have the farmlands, they wanted to occupy it. Well, that battle of the culture was lost. And that's another big reason why they are bringing in all of this immigration reform. Let us continue. The DEA struck a deal with Mexico's most notorious drug cartel. This is U.S. News. An investigation by El Universal found that between the year 2000 and 2012, the U.S. government had an arrangement with Mexico's Sinaloa drug cartel that allowed the organization to smuggle billions of dollars of drugs while Somalia provided information on rival cartels. Sinaloa, led by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing that name wrong, supplies 80% of the drugs entering the Chicago area and has a presence in most cities across the United States. There have long been allegations that Guzman, considered to be the world's most powerful drug trafficker, coordinates with American authorities. And this is an editor's note. As we have said before, the feds are running the narcotics industry in America. Totally agree with that. This is from featured stories by the Alex Jones channel. Feds caught shipping cocaine into U.S. Documents prove U.S. Fed agents allowed cartel to traffic cocaine in exchange for information. U.S. federal agents allegedly allowed the Sinaloa drug cartel to traffic several tons of cocaine into the United States in exchange for information about rival cartels, according to court documents filed in U.S. federal court. The allegations are part of the defense of Vicente Zambada Nibla, a top lieutenant of drug kingpin Joaquin Chapo Guzman, who was extradited to the United States to face drug trafficking charges in Chicago. The case could prove to be a bombshell on par with the ATF's Operation Fast and Furious, except that instead of U.S. guns being allowed to walk across the border, the Sinaloa cartel was allowed to bring drugs into the United States. Well over a 12-year period, the documents show. So, we've got the DEA running drugs, particularly cocaine in this matter, with the most notorious trafficker of Central America. Very interesting. And why'd they do it? Well, they're saying they did it because they want to have information on rival cartels. Why? Because evidently them rival cartels aren't paying the DEA guys enough money, so you're not paying us, you're not playing our game, we're going to shut you down. We are going to shut you down. And my friends, when we get into Operation Fast and Furious, you will see that the ATF was all part of that and that the drugs went to this very same, the weapons went to this very same drug cartel. This is about control, my friends. This is about control. And think about it. You know, the way this article reads, they didn't just let them go over the border. They've got a complete distribution system set up throughout the country. They didn't just let them go over the border. They let them distribute it. Why? So we can say, hey, we've got this epidemic. We're in a state of emergency. This cocaine's a real menace to our people. We've got to do something about this. So we need more funding for law enforcement. We need to take away the rights of the people because of this emergency. Can you say Hegelian dialectic? Crisis reaction solution, part of the triangle. They play with us every day. Create the crisis, allow the cocaine in. Not only just allow the cocaine in, but help them, supplement it, bringing it in. Get the emotional response you want from the people, the frustration, the anger, and the fear of the drug, and what it's doing to our society, and rightfully so, and bring in the solution which doesn't stop the cocaine from coming in, but expands the authorities, takes away your liberties, and you accept it because of the emotional response that they got from you. Feds laundered millions for Mexican drug cartel. And my friends, this isn't just the feds. Wachovia, Chase, J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, all of these banks. We did a whole show on this. Probably about 2 years ago. We did a whole show. And do you remember Wachovia's penalty? From what they made, or what they proved, I'm not saying they found it all, but what they proved that they made profit on the laundering of the drug money, to what the penalty was. Remember that? We did it for you verbatim. 0.0001. 1/1000th of 1% of what they discovered that they laundered and profited on. But don't let them catch you smoking that evil marijuana. Feds laundered millions for Mexican drug cartel. This is by Graham Raymond, the Village Voice. Investigators with the DEA helped a Mexican narcotics kingpin transfer billions of dollars into illegal cash profits, the New York Times reported today. The DEA program recalls a similar, much smaller scale operation first reported in The Voice last month in our article about government informant Angel Perez. The Voice article disclosed that Perez convinced U.S. Immigration and Customs Service agents to move $500,000 in cash from the Dominican Republic to Miami. But somehow the smuggling operation didn't result in any arrest or even the identification of the source of the money. The Times reported, meanwhile, says that the DIA agents got involved in an illegal scheme back in 2007 to infiltrate and take part of drug organizations in Mexico. The agents also helped the kingpin, Harold Morocco Provada Ortega, and again, I apologize if I'm butchering the name, move a big shipment of cocaine from Ecuador through Dallas, Texas, and the DEA agents posed as pilots, offering to ship the cocaine for $1,000 a kilo. So we've got the DEA involved here. We've got the U.S. Immigration and Customs agents here. All moving cocaine, all profiting on cocaine. Insider, CIA orchestrated Operation Fast and Furious. Washington Times journalist Robert Farago and Ralph Dixon cited a CIA insider to make the claim that Operation Fast and Furious was a Central Intelligence Agency orchestrated program to arm the Sinaloa drug cartel. Now, where did we just hear this name? Didn't we just hear this name because we're helping them make billions of dollars every year, bringing cocaine into the country, distributing the cocaine to the country, while you think we're fighting it? We're not only helping them move the cocaine, launder the money, set up the distribution systems, we're arming them. In congressional testimony, William Newell, former ATF special agent in charge of the Phoenix Field Division, testified that the Internal Revenue Service, Drug Enforcement Administration, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement were full, quote unquote, full partners in Operation Fast and Furious. Mr. Newell's list left out the most important player, the CIA. According to a CIA insider, the agency has a strong hand in creating, orchestrating, and exploiting Operation Fast and Furious. The program, with its designed cover of tracking where guns went to so drug lords who purchased them could later be arrested downstream, was actually a deliberate effort to prevent the Los Zetas drug cartel from staging a successful coup d'etat against the government of Felipe Calderon by arming rival gang Sinaloa, according to the Times. A relationship that is extending to allow the Sinaloas to fly. Now listen to this. This is in court testimony. 747 cargo planes packed with cocaine into the American airspace unmolested. The CIA made sure the trade wasn't one way. It persuaded the ATF to create Operation Fast and Furious, a no-strings, this is court testimony, a no-strings-attached variation of the agency's previous firearms sting in operation. By design, the ATF operation armed the Mexican government preferred cartel on the street level near the American border and in America, where the Zetas are more active, states to report. The notion that Fast and Furious was used as a cover for which to arm the Sinaloa cartel would explain why the Feds showed little interest in following up where the guns ended up once they left the United States. The Obama administration and ATF claimed that the Fast and Furious program was part of a sting operation to catch leading Mexican drug runners, yet it is admitted that the government stopped tracking the firearms as soon as they crossed the border, defeating the entire object of the mission. That wasn't the object of the mission, my friends. That's how they sold it to the people once they got caught. They also get into here the gangs working out throughout Los Angeles, Dallas, New York, and so forth. And I obviously don't have time to get into all that, but I think you get the picture. I think you get the picture. According to the FBI, now the other agencies that were involved with this, working relationship with, this is court testimony, the FBI, Homeland Security, the U.S. Department of Justice, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the Drug Enforcement Administration. Okay. Now that we hopefully folks, you see the facade here. Okay? And we haven't even talked about the heroin. Governor Shumlin is going on about the threat of heroin to Vermont. I totally agree with him. It is a threat. But I plead with you, Governor, to not come down with the strong force of the law but let's put an end to the availability of it. And to do that, you better talk to the feds. You better talk to the feds, because if we control Afghanistan and 91% of the world's opium is coming and heroin coming from what's called the Golden Crescent in Afghanistan, how is it that we're not aware of this? Well, actually we are, my friends. Because you can go to the website, as we said before, whatreallyhappened.com, punch in Afghanistan, click on Afghanistan and opium, and you will see American troops not only protecting the opium fields, you will see them harvesting the product. U.S. soldiers in uniform, protecting the fields, harvesting the product, packaging the product, and carrying it away in packages about this big. You've got to understand, my friends, that this war on drugs is a facade. And they knew what it would do. They knew this would create an underworld of corruption. Well, what are they? They're the biggest corruption in American history. This is the system they operate under, by. All the time, they put you to sleep with that mind control. And they make you desire this authority. We got to do something about this heroin problem, the Hegelian dialectic. My friends, please always ask Key Bono who benefits here. All right, enough said. Edward Mandell House, associated with the Rockefeller's National City Bank, very instrumental in getting the Federal Reserve Act originated in Texas, very instrumental in beginning and starting World War I. He was one of the big setups of having the Lusitania sunk. And yes, I did say setup. As a matter of fact, and we had this on this program some years ago, where the Germans, we actually made a big copy of it for you, where the Germans actually posted an ad in the New York newspapers warning people not to go on the Lusitania because it was being set up. And it was full of arms. And they were going to put it right down the middle where they knew all the wolf packs were. And if you don't know what wolf packs were, my friends, that's what the Germans called their conglomerate, their battle groups, if you would, of submarines that they were very, very successful with. Okay, so Edward Mandell House, as a Rhodes Scholar, becomes part of the Round Table Group and numerous secret societies, had 4 pet projects, a graduated income tax, as we said, was done, a central bank done, private bank done, creation of the Central Agency done, and the League of Nations. They did not get the League of Nations done with the fomenting of World War I, so that's okay. We'll just kill another 52 million people throughout the world. We'll foment and finance World War II. We won't call it the League of Nations. We'll give it something a little more friendly to the American people. We'll call it the United Nations. Between 1901 and 1913, the House of Morgan and the House of Rockefeller formed close alliances with the Dukes and the Mellons, Wall Street powers, including Carnegie, Whitney, Vanderbilt, Brown, Harriman, and as we said a couple of weeks ago, Brown Brothers Harriman Union Bank out of New York. That's who financed the Third Reich. Look it up. We did this verbatim to you again. And we proved to you who the fund manager was between the Brown Brothers Union Harriman Bank of New York and the Reich Bank of Germany. Do you remember who it was? A guy named Prescott Bush, the grandfather of George W. Look it up. The Round Table Group wanted to control the people by having the government tax the people and deposit the people's money in central banks. Well, my friends, they taxed you to death, and you no longer even have money. Okay, I'm running out of time, so let's get into what Mr. Edward Mandell House's statement is. This is from the Congressional Record, okay? This is Mr. House speaking to President Woodrow Wilson in the White House. Very soon, every American will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people, and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel the people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Now, mind you, my friends, at this time, there was still gold and silver intrinsic value backing our money. We had real money. The bankers had not taken over our money system yet. Okay? And what is he talking about, this fiat paper? We're going to get into that. Every American will be forced to register or suffer being unable to work and earn a living. They will be our chattel, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of the law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent forever to remain economic slaves through taxation secured by their pledges. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit that will be a commercial value designed to make us a profit, and they will be none the wiser. For not one man in a million could ever figure out our plans, and if by accident one or two should figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. After all, this is the only logical way to fund government, by floating liens and debt to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably reap to us huge profits beyond our wildest expectations, leaving every American a contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. Without realizing it, every American will insure us for any loss we may incur, and in this matter, every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless and without any hope for their redemption, and we will employ the high office of the president of our dummy corporation to foment this plot against America. Okay, pretty striking statement. Now let's get into some of the language. All right, what happens when we register? When you register something, I don't care if it's your dog, you lose possession of it by law. You register something, folks, you don't own anything. And do you register everything? You register your land, you register your car, you register your own biological property, your sons and daughters, yourself? Of course you do. Of course you do. So, first of all, they got to get us to register biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people. What's keeping track of something? I think you know the answer to that. That's pretty basic language. If you're keeping track of something, you are always, number one, having control of it. You always know not just where it is, you have the means of control. And that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. Well, let's get out our Black's Law Dictionary and let's get an understanding of what is the ancient act of pledging. Okay. You have to, my friends, the definition here is literally for pledging quite lengthy. I'm not going to have the time to read the whole thing, but let's just get into that, okay? Pledge. In the law of bailment, a bailment of goods to a creditor as a security for debt or a debt engagement. A bailment or delivery of goods by a debtor to his creditor, to be kept till the debt is discharged. The necessary elements to constitute a contract one of pledge are: possession of the pledged property must pass from the pledgor to the pledgee. The legal title to the property must remain in the pledgor, and the pledgee must have a lien on the property for the payment of a debt or the performance of an obligation due him by the pledgor, such as a chattel mortgage. The legal title passes to the mortgagee subject to a defeasance. There is a clear distinction between mortgage and pledge. In a pledge, the legal title remains in the pledgor. In a mortgage, it passes to the mortgagee. In a pledge, the pledgee must have possession. You get it? My friends, what he's telling you is that your sweat equity, your body, everything you own, your thoughts, everything, your biological property, as he puts it, is a surety to the facade debt. This is what you do by signing a birth certificate. You bond your children. Shame on you. Shame on you. Let us continue. Okay, so what he's telling you here is that we will keep track of the people that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, not your agenda, their agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Interesting word, two of them. Let's look at security. What do we get when we get security? Security, protection, assurance, indemnification. The term is usually applied to an obligation or a pledge or lien given by the debtor, that's you, in order to make sure the payment or performance of his debt by furnishing the creditor with a resource to be used in case of failure of the principal obligation. My friends, what do you think the resource is? It is your sweat equity. You bonded your children. They will never be free under these terms because they are the security to what? They are the security for a chargeback for our fiat paper. So what's the security? It's an assurance. The term applied to an obligation, a pledge, a lien given by the debtor in order to make sure that the payment or performance of this debt by furnishing the creditor with a resource to be used in the case of failure in the principal obligation. You are the security, the surety to the fiat debt, and you put your children in the same position. Shame on you. Chargeback. What is a chargeback? Let's see if we can find that in our law dictionary. First of all, what is to charge? To charge, to impose a burden, a duty, or obligation or lien. To create a claim or lien against property. To make a claim, a demand. To accuse. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. And what is the chargeback? An encumbrance or the lien or the claim, or the burden. It is the obligation or duty. It is a liability to the acquisition. So you understand what they're saying to you? Your sweat equity is the insurance, if you would, of the obligation or duty that you have as the surety, as their security to the facade debt. That's what he's telling you. Let's read that again. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a charge back for our fiat paper currency. What is a fiat paper currency? You notice he did not use the word money. And I'm going to tell you why he didn't use the word money, because money does not encompass debt. Money does not encompass debt. You work for a Federal Reserve note. Matter of fact, most of you judge your life's worth on these debt instruments you have in your pocket. Federal Reserve note, Federal Reserve, private foreign bank, for-profit corporation, note, acknowledgement of debt. Fiat paper currency, a medium of exchange, not money. Money does not encompass debt. Fiat, of no value. There is no intrinsic value backing that instrument up. You know what's backing it up? They used to say, oh, the faith and confidence of the American people are backing it up. Do you have much any more faith? No, but you know what you do have a lot of? Ignorance. You are not aware of what you're judging your life on, what you're compelled to use for a medium of exchange. Every American will be forced. Of course, now we do it because we're so conditioned, we do it voluntarily. You will be forced. What is force? What is force? Think of that in your head. You think you're free? You're being forced to register or suffer being unable to work and earn a living. They will be our chattel. Oh, wow. Big word. Chattel. And chattel, an article of personal property, any species of property, listen to this though, not amounting to a freehold. What's a freehold? A freehold is a possession that is free of any lien. You don't hear the term anymore because you don't have anything that's not a freehold. Free, it's free. There's no obligation. There's no security for sense of an obligation. What's a hold? Possession. That's what this is telling you. An article of personal property, any species of property, but not amounting to a freehold. Things which in law are deemed personal property, they are divisible into chattel, real, and chattel, personal. The term chattel is a mere comprehension, one more than in goods, and it includes animate as well as inanimate objects and property. Chattel is evidence of debt. And if you want to reference that, it's Green Line Terminal Company versus Martin, 122 West Virginia. Chattel, evidence of debt. Okay? Just unbelievable. Chattel can be a mortgage. It can be a lien, an instrument of sale personally conveying title to a mortgagee. An absolute pledge. Gee, that's the fourth time we've come up with that word pledge. Movable property which has been liened. Chattel. Are you movable? Are you property? Have you been liened? You, my friends, we as a people are chattel to these international bankers. They will be our chattel, their possession, our. And we will hold the security, we've already done security, interest for them, over them forever by operation of law merchant. Folks, we went over this years ago. We no longer have a common law system. We have what's called admiralty law. And there are different venues of admiralty law, and one of them is commercial or law mercantile. That's what he's talking about. They already knew they were going to take away the common law system of this country. And the reason why they did that was so they could put us all, in, number one, into a commercial venue of law. Because common law reads this way. If you do not do harm to another or another's property, then the law has no dealing with you. But in commercial law, you are merely a bag of goods. And in commercial law, you're either a creditor or you're a debtor. And if you've been bonded, which you have with your birth certificate, think of the word certificate, my friends, it means bearer use of. Someone is allowing you to use something of value. Then you are a debtor. And this is why we don't own anything. Because in a commercial law system, debtors cannot own anything of value. They can let you use it. You can have papers to show they're letting you use it, but you'll pay them annually a fee to do it. They will be our chattel, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of the law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Okay? I'm not going to have enough time, I can already tell, to get into this whole thing. Americans, by unknowingly, ignorance, or unwittingly delivering a bill of lading. Ooh. My friend, what is a bill of lading? Bill of lading. Law merchant. Law merchantile. So understand, that's the law system we're under right now. The written evidence of a contract for the carriage and delivery of goods. A written memorandum given by the person in command of the goods. So not only are you goods, you're not even in command of yourself. They are in command of it. And think of this mindset, my friends. They look at you as property, as a bill of lading. You are not only the security to the debt, but let's look at his language. You are unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading. You are delivering the goods to them. Understand that. That's what he's talking about. This is admiralty law. Law mercantile. The term is often applied to receipt and undertaking given by a carrier of goods by land. A bill of lading is an instrument in writing signed by the carrier or the carrier's agent, describing the goods so as to identify it, stating the name of the goods and the terms of the contract for carriage, and agreeing or directing that the freight be delivered to the order or assigns of a specific person at a specific delivery place. A clean bill of lading is one which contains nothing in the margin qualifying the words of the bill of lading itself. In other words, there is no contract to deliver the goods. My friends, we're going to continue this in the next show. I've run out of time, obviously. But understand what this man is telling you in this statement, and we haven't even finished it. Number one, we're in a commercial law system. Number two, you're either a creditor or a debtor. We're all bonded because of our mother signing this contract with the Bank of International Settlements through the Office of Risk Management. Now, most people say, what's this Office of Risk Management? I've never heard of that. Well, if you're in Vermont, you can go to Montpelier and go to the Office of Risk Management. You go to your state, the corporation capital. Every state's a corporation. Go to the corporation capital, walk into the Office of Risk Management, ask them for an original copy of the birth certificate. It may take you some time to get that. You may have to really put the pressure on them. They're going to try to give you a small little thing, but you want a copy of the original birth certificate. Look in the lower corner, the print's about this big, and it will say that this is secured paper. And on that what's a secured paper? It's a security. We just described it to you. And on that paper, it will say Midwest Bank Note Company, if you're from Rhode Island. If you're from Vermont, it probably says North American Bank Note Company. That's who's holding the surety. You are chattel. And now that you're aware of this, I invite you to do the research and understand the predicament that we're in. We are going to continue next week with Colonel Mandelshouse's statement, and we're going to break this down into further depth so that you have an understanding exactly the scheme that is being played against not just the American people, but the people of the world. My friends, as always, we're very thankful you take the time from your busy day to join us. As always, we close in reminding you that your government is your responsibility. And again, thank you for watching.
Got to read between the lines.